Jake Martinez wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag as he looked around his small garage. The place was a mess of spare parts, broken tools, and half-finished projects. Oil stains covered the concrete floor, and the walls were lined with shelves holding everything from old engine parts to rusty bolts. This was his world, and he loved every chaotic bit of it. The sun was setting over New Haven Colony, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jake had been working on a mining hauler all day, trying to fix its damaged thruster system with parts that were never meant to work together. That was his specialty, making things work when they shouldn't. The other mechanics in town called him crazy, but Jake had a gift for seeing solutions where others saw only problems. He was closing up for the night when he heard footsteps outside. Jake frowned because most people knew better than to come around this late. The colony was small, and everyone knew his hours. He grabbed a wrench just in case and walked toward the main entrance of his garage. A tall figure stood in the doorway, completely covered by a dark cloak. The stranger was much taller than any human Jake had ever seen, easily 7 feet tall with a strange way of moving that seemed too smooth and careful. Jake gripped his wrench tighter and called out to the visitor, "We're closed for the night. Come back tomorrow if you need something fixed." The figure stepped forward slowly, and Jake could see 4 arms moving under the cloak. His heart started beating faster because he had never seen anything like this before. The stranger spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes mixed with static. "I have heard of your skills, Jake Martinez. I need your help with something that others cannot fix?" Jake's mouth fell open. Not only was this clearly not human, but it knew his name. He had dealt with alien traders before, but they usually came during the day and announced themselves properly. This felt different and dangerous. "Who are you, and what do you want?" The stranger reached up with 2 of his 4 arms and pulled back the hood of his cloak. Jake stumbled backward and nearly dropped his wrench. The alien's head was like a crystal sculpture that had been carved by a master artist. His skin was translucent blue with veins of silver light running through it like lightning frozen in time. His eyes were large and completely black, reflecting Jake's garage lights like mirrors. "My name is Keth. I am Zalani. I have traveled far to find you because I have heard that humans can fix anything." Jake had heard of the Zalani before, but only in stories. They were supposed to be an ancient race that lived on the far edge of known space. Most humans had never seen one, and Jake certainly never expected to meet one in his garage. You know my name? And what makes you think I can help you?" Keth moved closer, and Jake could see that his walk was strange. The alien's upper body moved normally, but his lower body seemed stiff and awkward. As Keth got closer to the light, Jake realized why. The silver veins in the lower half of Keth's body were dark and broken, like a machine that had lost power. Word travels between the stars about those who can do impossible things. Your name is known even among my people as one who can make broken things work again. I need you to build something for me that my own people cannot." Jake set down his wrench and studied Keth more carefully. The alien was clearly injured, and despite his strange appearance, there was something in his black eyes that looked familiar. It was the same look Jake had seen in the mirror after his own accident years ago, the look of someone who had lost something important and was desperate to get it back. "What happened to you?" Keth was quiet for a long moment, and Jake could hear the soft humming sound that seemed to come from inside the alien's crystal-like body. When Keth spoke again, his voice was sadder. "There was an accident in the deep mines on my homeworld. A tunnel collapsed, and I was trapped for 3 days. When my people found me, they were able to save my life, but my spine was crushed. The lower half of my body no longer works." Jake nodded slowly. He understood pain and loss better than most people. His own left leg had never worked quite right after a speeder crash when he was younger. It wasn't the same as being paralyzed, but it was enough to make him understand what Keth was going through. "I'm sorry that happened to you. But I fix machines, not people. You need a doctor, not a mechanic." Keth's head tilted to one side in a way that reminded Jake of a curious bird. "That is where you are wrong, Jake Martinez. I do not need to be fixed. I need something to be built, What kind of something? A ship. A small, personal craft that can work with my body as it is now. My people are masters of biological healing, but they do not understand machines the way humans do. They cannot make something that works with a broken body instead of trying to fix the body itself. Jake felt his interest growing despite his caution. He had always loved a good challenge, and this sounded like the kind of problem that would keep him awake at night until he solved it. Why can't you just use a regular ship? Most craft can be flown by anyone. Standard ships require the use of legs for many controls. They are built for bodies that work completely. I need something different, something that uses my strengths instead of working around my weaknesses. Jake looked at Keth's 4 arms and began to understand. While the alien's lower body was damaged, his upper body seemed to work perfectly. Those 4 arms could potentially control a ship in ways that no human pilot ever could. This would be a big project. I'm not sure I have the right parts or the knowledge to build something like that. Keth reached into his cloak and pulled out a small bag. When he opened it, Jake's garage was filled with soft blue light. Inside the bag were crystals that seemed to contain their own tiny storms of lightning. They were beautiful and clearly valuable. Quantum crystals from the deep mines of my world. They are worth more than your entire shop. This is what I offer in payment. Jake stared at the crystals, knowing that they could buy him a new garage, better tools, and enough supplies to last for years. But more than that, he was intrigued by the challenge itself. Building a ship for someone with a completely different body than his own would be the most interesting project he had ever attempted. If I agree to this, I can't promise it will work. I've never built anything like this before. That is why I came to you, Jake Martinez. You are known for doing things that have never been done before. Jake made his decision. All right, Keth, let's see what we can build together. Jake spent the entire night after meeting Keth sketching ideas on old paper bags and napkins. His mind raced with possibilities as he tried to imagine how to build a ship for someone with 4 arms and no use of their legs. By morning, his kitchen table was covered with rough drawings and calculations that probably made sense only to him. The first challenge was finding the right base for the ship. Jake walked through his garage looking at every piece of junk and spare part with new eyes. He had 3 old racing pods that previous owners had abandoned after crashes. Most mechanics would have scrapped them for parts, but Jake saw potential in their compact design. He chose the smallest pod, one that had been built for speed rather than comfort. The original cockpit was designed for a human pilot who could use both hands and feet to control the ship. Jake would need to completely redesign the entire control system to work with Keth's unique body. Jake started by ripping out everything inside the pod. Seats, control panels, life support systems, and navigation equipment all went into a pile on his garage floor. Soon he was left with just the empty shell of what had once been a racing ship. It looked like a metal egg with a hole cut in the top. Keth arrived at the garage just as Jake was finishing the teardown. The alien moved carefully, using his 4 arms to help support his weight as he walked. Jake noticed that Keth's lower body was completely rigid, forcing him to move in a way that looked uncomfortable and tiring. You work fast, Keth said, looking at the empty pod. But I do not understand how this shell will become a ship that I can fly? That's the beauty of starting with nothing, Jake replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. When you tear everything out, you can build it back exactly the way you need it. Jake had Keth sit in the empty pod so he could understand how the alien's body would fit inside. Keth's 4 arms were longer than human arms, and his torso was more flexible. His legs were completely stiff, but his upper body could twist and bend in ways that would be impossible for a human. Tell me about how your people normally control their ships, Jake said as he took measurements. We use biological interfaces, Keth explained. Our ships respond to our thoughts and emotions. But those systems require a complete nervous system to function properly. My damaged spine cannot connect to our technology anymore. Jake nodded thoughtfully. He had heard about alien biotech before, but had never seen it in action. Human ships used mechanical controls because that was what worked for human bodies and minds. But maybe there was a way to combine both approaches. What if we created a different kind of interface? Something that uses the parts of your body that still work perfectly. Jake disappeared into the back of his garage and returned with a pile of electronic components. Some were from medical equipment he had salvaged from a crashed ambulance. Others were from gaming systems that used brainwave detection to control characters in virtual worlds. "This is crazy enough that it might actually work," Jake muttered, as he began connecting circuits and processors. "We'll use your natural electromagnetic field to interface with the ship's systems." Keth watched with fascination as Jake worked. The humans' approach was completely different from Zilani engineering. Where Keth's people would grow technology organically, Jake was building it piece by piece, testing each component separately, before adding it to the whole. "Your people build things the way we grow gardens," Keth observed. "Each part must work with all the others, but they start as separate pieces." "Exactly," Jake said, pleased that Keth understood. "And that means we can customize every single part for your specific needs." Over the next week, Jake worked 18-hour days redesigning the ship's control system. He created a neural interface headset that could read the electrical patterns in Keth's brain and translate them into ship commands. The pilot's seat was rebuilt to support Keth's paralyzed lower body, while allowing his upper body complete freedom of movement. The breakthrough came when Jake realized that Keth's 4 arms could control the ship in ways that no human pilot ever could. He designed a control system that used all 4 arms simultaneously, allowing Keth to manage navigation, weapons, communications, and life support all at the same time. "This is impossible," Keth said on the 5th day as he watched Jake install the quantum crystal power system. "My people's best engineers said that someone with my injuries could never pilot a ship again." "Your people are probably really good at fixing things that work the way they're supposed to," Jake replied. "But humans specialize in making things work when they shouldn't." Jake had to solve dozens of smaller problems as he worked. Keth's crystal-like body conducted electricity differently than human flesh, so all the electronic interfaces had to be recalibrated. The alien's unique physiology meant that standard life support systems wouldn't work properly. Even the shape of the cockpit had to be adjusted to accommodate Keth's longer limbs and different joint structure, but with each problem, Jake found a solution. He used parts from medical equipment to create a custom life support system. He modified gaming controllers to work with Keth's 4-armed coordination. He even rewrote the ship's computer software to respond to Keth's thought patterns instead of human voice commands. Keth visited the garage every day, watching Jake work and answering endless questions about Zilani physiology and technology. The alien seemed amazed by Jake's approach to problem solving. Where Keth's people would try to find existing solutions, Jake created new ones from scratch. "Your species is very strange," Keth said one evening as Jake installed the final control circuits. "You see a problem and immediately think of ways to go around it instead of through it." "That's probably because we're not smart enough to solve problems the right way," Jake laughed. "So we have to find the wrong way that works." As the ship began to take shape, Jake realized that he wasn't just building a vehicle. He was creating something that had never existed before. A fusion of human engineering and Zilani technology that neither species could have developed alone. The quantum crystals provided power that was cleaner and more efficient than anything humans had invented, while Jake's mechanical ingenuity made it possible to use that power in completely new ways. By the end of the 2nd week, the ship was ready for its first test. Jake had created something that looked like a cross between a racing pod and a piece of alien art. It was sleek and fast, but covered in crystal formations that pulsed with their own inner light. The cockpit was designed specifically for Keth's body, with controls that no human could ever use effectively. "Tomorrow we find out if this crazy idea actually works," Jake said, standing back to admire his creation. Keth looked at the ship with hope in his black eyes. "Tomorrow I find out if I can fly again." Jake stood next to the finished ship as the morning sun cast long shadows across his garage floor. The craft looked nothing like any vessel he had ever seen before. The quantum crystals embedded in its hull caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest feel tight with pride and nervousness. Keth approached the ship slowly, his forearms trembling slightly as he reached out to touch the smooth surface. The crystals responded to his presence, glowing, brighter and pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Jake had never seen anything like it, and he was the one who had built the thing. "The ship recognizes you," Jake said, amazed by what he was seeing. "It's like it was waiting for you." "Quantum crystals form connections with their users," Keth explained, his voice full of wonder. "I did not expect this to work with human technology. But you have created something that bridges our two worlds." Jake helped Keth into the cockpit, adjusting the custom seat and checking all the connections. The neural interface headset fit perfectly over Keth's crystalline head, and the four-armed control system responded to his touch like it had been made specifically for him, which Jake realized it had been. "Remember, start slow," Jake warned, as he sealed the cockpit. "We have no idea how this thing will handle, and I'd rather not scrape you off the ceiling of my garage." Keth's laugh sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I have not flown in over a year, Jake Martinez. Slow is the only speed I remember." The ship's engines came to life with a sound unlike anything Jake had ever heard. Instead of the roar of human engines, this craft hummed with a deep, musical tone that seemed to resonate in his bones. The quantum crystals throughout the hull began to pulse in unison, creating patterns of light that were hypnotic to watch. Jake stepped back and activated the garage door, revealing the open sky beyond. The ship rose from the floor as smoothly as a feather caught in an updraft. There were no jerky movements or engine strain, just a graceful lift that made flying look as natural as breathing. Through the cockpit window, Jake could see Keth's face transformed by joy. The alien's black eyes reflected the crystal light, and his forearms moved across the controls with fluid precision. This was what he had been built for, what his body was meant to do, and Jake had given it back to him. The ship glided out of the garage and into the morning sky. Jake watched from the doorway as Keth performed maneuvers that should have been impossible for such a small craft. The ship twisted and turned like a living thing, responding to Keth's thoughts as much as his physical controls. It was faster than anything Jake had ever seen, but also more graceful. Keth brought the ship back to the garage after 20 minutes of flight, landing with barely a whisper of sound. When the cockpit opened, the alien was glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen him. The silver veins in his upper body pulsed with energy, and his whole being seemed to vibrate with excitement. "This is beyond anything I dreamed possible," Keth said, his voice filled with emotion. "You have given me back my freedom, Jake Martinez. You have given me back my life." Jake felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the morning sun. He had fixed plenty of things in his life, but he had never fixed something as important as this. Watching Keth fly had been like watching a bird return to the sky after a broken wing had healed. "How did it feel?" Jake asked, unable to hide his own excitement. "Like I was born to fly this ship," Keth replied. "The neural interface makes it feel like an extension of my own body. When I think about turning left, the ship turns left. When I want to go faster, it responds before I even touch the controls. It is perfect." Over the next 2 days, Keth returned to the garage for more test flights. Each time, he pushed the ship a little harder, exploring its capabilities and learning its limits. Jake watched every flight with growing amazement. The ship could perform maneuvers that would tear apart a normal craft, but the quantum crystal technology made it stronger and more flexible than anything human engineering had ever produced. But their test flights were not going unnoticed. On the third day, Jake saw other ships in the sky, staying at a distance but clearly watching Keth's flights. Some of them had human markings, while others were designs he didn't recognize. The attention made him nervous, but Keth seemed unaware of the observers. "I think we're attracting some interest," Jake told Keth as they prepared for another flight. "There are ships watching us." Keth glanced at the sky and nodded calmly. "It is to be expected. What we have created here is unique. Both our peoples will want to understand it. Is that a problem? It should not be, Keth said, but Jake noticed a slight tension in his voice. We have broken no laws. We have simply solved a problem that needed solving. That afternoon, Keth pushed the ship harder than ever before. He flew through the canyon outside town, weaving between rock formations at speeds that made Jake's heart race. The ship responded to every challenge, turning impossible maneuvers into elegant dances through the air. But as Keth flew, Jake noticed that the watching ships were getting closer. Some of them were definitely human military vessels, their hull markings clearly visible through his old binoculars. Others were sleek and strange, possibly alien craft that had followed Keth to New Haven. When Keth landed, Jake could see the concern in his friend's crystalline features. The alien had noticed the watchers too, and unlike Jake, he seemed to understand what their presence meant. This is more serious than I hoped, Keth said quietly. The energy signature of our ship is unlike anything either of our peoples have seen before. They will want to study it to understand how it works. Is that bad? It could be, Keth admitted. Not everyone will see this as a simple act of friendship between two individuals. Some will see it as unauthorized technology transfer between species. Others will see it as a threat to the balance of power. Jake felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. He had built the ship to help a friend, nothing more. The idea that his simple act of kindness could cause problems between entire species had never occurred to him. What do we do? We wait, Keth said, looking at the ship circling overhead. And we hope that wisdom prevails over fear. As if summoned by their conversation, a large military vessel appeared on the horizon. It was clearly human. With the markings of the Colonial Defense Force, Jake recognized the design as a heavy cruiser, the kind of ship that carried enough firepower to level a small city. I think our waiting is over, Jake said as the cruiser grew larger in the sky. Keth nodded grimly. Indeed it is, my friend. Indeed it is. The military cruiser-un's defender landed in the field behind Jake's garage with a sound like controlled thunder. Jake had never seen such a massive ship up close, and its presence made his small workshop look like a toy in comparison. The vessel was dark gray with weapon ports along its sides that looked like dead eyes staring down at him. Jake watched from his doorway as a boarding ramp lowered from the cruiser's belly. 20 soldiers in full combat gear marched out in perfect formation, their weapons ready but not yet aimed. Behind them came a woman in officer's uniform, her blonde hair pulled back in a regulation style and her blue eyes scanning the area with military precision. Jake Martinez, the woman called out as she approached the garage. I am Captain Lisa Stone of the Colonial Defense Force. We need to talk. Jake wiped his hands on his work shirt and stepped forward, trying to look more confident than he felt. What can I do for you, Captain? You can start by explaining what you've been building in here, Captain Stone replied, gesturing toward Keth's ship. Our sensors detected energy signatures that don't match any known human technology. We also have reports of unauthorized alien contact and possible technology transfer. I built a ship for a friend, Jake said simply. There's nothing unauthorized about helping someone who needs help. Captain Stone studied the ship with professional interest. Her engineers were already setting up scanning equipment around the craft, their instruments beeping and humming as they gathered data. Jake could see amazement on their faces as they examined the quantum crystal technology. Mr. Martinez, do you understand the implications of what you've done here? Captain Stone asked. This ship represents a fusion of human and alien technology that neither species has achieved before. The Colonial Defense Force has protocols for this kind of situation. What kind of protocols? Jake asked, not liking the sound of that. Protocols for preventing unauthorized sharing of advanced technology with alien species, Captain Stone explained. Technology that could potentially be used against human interests. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. I didn't share any technology. I built a ship for a disabled person who needed help. That's not a crime. Under Colonial Law 247, any collaboration between human citizens and alien entities that results in new technology must be approved by the Defense Force, Captain Stone said. You violated that law, Mr. Martinez, even if you didn't mean to. Before Jake could respond, he heard the familiar sound of Keth's ship approaching. The alien had been testing the craft's stealth systems in the outer atmosphere and was returning for his usual afternoon visit. Jake watched the ship land gracefully in front of the garage, its crystalline hull reflecting the afternoon sun. Kec emerged from the cockpit and immediately saw the soldiers surrounding his ship. His forearms moved to defensive positions, and the silver veins in his body began to pulse with warning light. The soldiers raised their weapons, and Jake stepped quickly between them. "Nobody shoot anybody," Jake said loudly. "Keth, these are human military officers. Captain Stone, this is Keth, the friend I built the ship for." Captain Stone studied Keth with the same professional interest she had shown the ship. "You're Zelani," she said. "What brings you to human space?" "I came seeking help that my own people could not provide," Keth replied carefully. "Jake Martinez has given me the ability to fly again after an injury left me paralyzed. And in return, you provided him with quantum crystal technology," Captain Stone observed. "Technology that your people normally keep secret?" "I provided." "Payment for services rendered," Keth said. "Nothing more." Captain Stone's engineers finished their initial scans and approached her with handheld devices full of data. Jake could see excitement and confusion on their faces as they reported their findings. "Captain, this technology is unlike anything we've seen," reported a young engineer with lieutenant's bars. "The quantum crystals are integrated with human computer systems in ways that should be impossible. The energy output is 3 times higher than our best engines, but the power consumption is actually lower." "How is that possible?" Captain Stone asked. "We don't know," the engineer admitted. "Mr. Martinez has created something that defies our understanding of both human and alien technology." Jake felt a strange mix of pride and worry. He had known. The ship was special, but he hadn't realized just how revolutionary it was. The expressions on the military officers' faces told him that this was bigger than he had imagined. "Mr. Martinez," Captain Stone said, turning back to him, "I need you to understand that this ship represents a potential shift in the balance of power between species. If humans can routinely create hybrid technologies like this, it changes everything." "I just wanted to help a friend," Jake said. "I didn't think about politics or balance of power." "That's exactly the problem," Captain Stone replied. "Individual acts of kindness can have consequences that affect entire civilizations. What happens when other aliens learn that humans can solve problems their own species cannot? What happens when our enemies realize we can adapt alien technology to our own purposes?" Jake looked at Keth and saw worry in his friend's black eyes. The alien understood the implications better than Jake did, and that understanding was clearly troubling him. "Perhaps I should leave," Keth said quietly. "I do not wish to cause problems between our peoples." "It's too late for that," Captain Stone said, not unkindly. "The ship exists, and both our species know about it. The question now is what we do about it." As if summoned by her words, another ship appeared in the sky above them. This one was clearly alien, with the flowing lines and crystal formations that marked it as Zelani design. It was much larger than Keth's personal craft, obviously a military vessel. "That would be my sister," Keth said with resignation. "I sent her a message about the ship's success. She must have come to investigate." The Zelani ship landed in the field opposite the human cruiser, and Jake found himself standing in the middle of what looked like a potential battlefield. Armed soldiers faced in both directions, while 2 alien species stared at each other across a small human garage. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Captain Stone said, speaking into her communication device. "We now have an uncontrolled first contact situation with potential technology transfer implications." Jake looked at his garage, at the ship he had built, and at the 2 military forces facing each other. All he had wanted to do was help a friend who couldn't walk. Now it seemed like he had started something that could affect the relationship between entire species. "Captain Stone," Jake said, "what happens now?" "Now we try to prevent a diplomatic incident," she replied. "And we figure out how to handle The fact that a small-town mechanic has just changed the balance of power in known space. A boarding ramp lowered from the Zelani ship, and Jake saw figures in crystalline armor beginning to emerge. The situation was about to get much more complicated. 4 figures emerged from the Zelani ship, their crystalline armor catching the afternoon light like prisms. They moved with the same careful grace as Keth, but there was something more dangerous about them. These were soldiers, and Jake could feel the tension in the air as both human and alien forces faced each other across his garage. The lead Zelani figure was taller than Keth and had deep purple veins running through her crystal skin instead of silver. She walked directly toward them with purpose, ignoring the human soldiers who had their weapons trained on her. Her black eyes fixed on Keth with an expression that seemed both angry and relieved. "Sister," Keth said quietly, moving forward too. "Meet her. You came quickly. You disappeared for weeks, then sent a message about impossible technology," the female Zelani replied, her voice carrying authority that made even Captain Stone straighten up. "What did you expect me to do?" Jake watched as the 2 aliens spoke in their own language, their voices creating harmony like a crystal wind chime in a storm. He couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the emotion in their conversation. The female Zelani was clearly upset. While Keth's responses sounded apologetic but determined, Captain Stone stepped forward, her hand resting on her sidearm. "I am Captain Lisa Stone of the Colonial Defense Force. You are in human space without authorization." The female Zelani turned her attention to Captain Stone, and Jake was surprised to see intelligence and calculation in her black eyes rather than hostility. "I am Commander Vera of the Zelani Deep Fleet. I am here to retrieve my brother and investigate reports of unauthorized technology sharing." "Your brother has not been held against his will," Captain Stone replied. "He came here seeking help from one of our civilians. Help that resulted in hybrid technology that neither of our species should possess," Commander Vara said, looking at Keth's ship. "This creation violates the technology preservation accords that both our peoples signed." Jake felt his heart sink. He had never heard of any technology preservation accords, but it sounded like the kind of official agreement that his simple garage project had probably violated in a dozen different ways. "I didn't know about any accords," Jake said, stepping forward despite the weapons pointed in various directions. "I just wanted to help someone who needed help." Commander Vera studied Jake with the same intense focus she had given Captain Stone. "You are the human who built this ship?" "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied, trying not to let his voice shake. "I'm Jake Martinez, and I own this garage." "You have created something that our best engineers said was impossible," Commander Vera said. "How?" Jake shrugged, feeling awkward under the gaze of so many important people. "I just looked at what Keth needed and figured out how to make it work. I used parts from different things and put them together in a new way." Commander Vara exchanged a look with Captain Stone, and Jake saw something pass between them that he didn't understand. It was as if they were having a conversation without words, weighing options and possibilities that he couldn't see. "Captain Stone," Commander Vara said finally, "your species has a reputation for adaptability and problem-solving, but we had not realized the extent of your capabilities. And your species has technology that we've only dreamed of," Captain Stone replied. "But until now, our peoples have kept those capabilities separate? Perhaps that separation has outlived its usefulness," Commander Vara suggested. Jake looked back and forth between the 2 military officers, beginning to understand that something important was happening. The tension in the air was changing. From confrontation to something else, something that felt like possibility. "What are you suggesting?" Captain Stone asked. "I am suggesting that what happened here was not a violation to be punished, but an opportunity to be explored," Commander Vara replied. "This human has proven that our technologies can work together in ways we never imagined. Perhaps it is time to make that collaboration official." Keth moved to stand beside Jake, his forearms spread in a gesture that seemed protective. "My sister, Jake Martinez, helped me because it was the right thing to do." He asked for nothing in return except the chance to solve an interesting problem. "Which is exactly why this could work," Commander Vara said. He was not motivated by profit or military advantage. He was motivated by compassion and curiosity. Captain Stone lowered her weapon and gestured for her soldiers to do the same. "What exactly are you proposing, Commander?" "A controlled exchange program," Commander Vara said. "A place where humans and Zelani can work together on projects that benefit both species. A place where we can learn from each other's approaches to problem solving." "And you think this garage should be that place?" Captain Stone asked, looking around at the cluttered workshop with new eyes. "This garage has already proven that such cooperation is possible," Commander Vara replied. "And Jake Martinez has shown that he can be trusted with both human and Zelani technology." Jake felt overwhelmed by the direction the conversation was taking. "Wait a minute. Are you talking about turning my garage into some kind of official alien research facility?" "Not just alien," Keth said, his voice warm with excitement. "Human and Zelani working together. Learning from each other. Building things that neither species could create alone." Captain Stone activated her communication device and spoke quietly to someone on her ship. Jake could hear only fragments of the conversation, but he caught words like unprecedented opportunity and controlled environment and strategic advantage. After several minutes, Captain Stone turned back to the group. "My superiors are interested in the proposal, but they want guarantees. Safeguards to prevent technology from being misused." "As do mine," Commander Vara agreed. "But I believe those safeguards can be arranged. The key is ensuring that the work is done openly, with representatives from both species present." Over the next hour, Jake watched in amazement as the two military commanders worked out the details of an agreement that would change his life forever. His small garage would become the first official human-Zelani collaborative engineering station. Keth would serve as the Zelani liaison while Jake would continue to do what he did best, solve impossible problems with whatever parts he could find. "There will be paperwork," Captain Stone warned Jake. "Lots of paperwork and inspections. And probably politicians who want to use your work for publicity. But there will also be the chance to build things that have never existed before," Keth added, "to help people from both our species in ways we never imagined." Jake looked at his cluttered garage, at the ship that had started everything, and at the alien who had become his friend. A year ago, his biggest worry had been finding parts to fix a broken mining hauler. Now, he was apparently going to be at the center of interspecies cooperation. "Well," Jake said finally, "I always did like a good challenge." 6 months later, Jake's garage had been expanded into a proper facility with clean work areas, modern equipment, and offices for the various officials who now monitored the project. But the heart of the operation was still Jake's original workshop, where he and Keth continued to solve problems that other engineers called impossible. The ship that had started it all sat in the place of Ona in the center of the facility. A reminder that sometimes the most important breakthroughs come not from grand plans or military strategies, but from simple acts of kindness between friends.